Hello, I'm Charles Moffat, and this is part two of my book review of Dylan Doose's book, Fire and Sword. I ran out of space on my phone. That's what happened. This is why there's now part two. So, I was talking about typos, and honestly, like, the biggest typo I noticed in here was staring versus starring. So basically, what happened was and many of writers out there will do it too. You'll be typing words, right, and you type two R's by accident, and you end up with starring when it's supposed to be staring. So it's just a very simple typo that sneaks in there, and you wouldn't necessarily notice it unless you have like a sharp-eyed editor. And not even the editors would necessarily always catch these things. So it's just the thing that happens. And for context purposes, this book has a whole bunch of typos in it. So this is a book that was like published back in the 80s, I think. And there's a whole bunch of typos in here. And there's some grammar errors as well. And this is like a professionally, published book by, what's the publisher? Daw. Daw published this thing. Okay, and it happens. And the same thing with the Witcher series. When you read the Witcher series, there's typos in that too. So these are just things that happen. It's not just an issue for people who self-publish their own books. Uh, Even the professionals sometimes have errors in there, and then the same thing with the Conan books and so forth. You're going to find typos in them sometimes that sneak in there that the editors didn't notice. Okay, so it just happens, and it happens with my own work too. And I try to fix it because I will, once per year, I'll basically go through my books and be like looking for typos, or things that snuck in there that snuck past the spell check. Okay, because it happens. It does happen. And it's not like, authors are being sloppy. It's just that sometimes you press the button twice or whatever. And you just end up with like, oh, that's spelt wrong. That's a problem. I should fix that. The grammar issues, that's pretty easy to fix these days. You just need a really good editor. Now, so that was really the biggest problem that I had with this book is some of the typos. Otherwise, it's a really good book. And I would actually be very interested in reading more of the series because this is just book one. Okay, so this is definitely, I don't think I would read this particular book over again, but I would definitely read books 2, 3, and 4, whatever in the series, because if they're as good as this book, then they're definitely worth reading. So if you're into like say Grimdark Sword and Sorcery, go buy this book. Go buy the second book. Go buy the third. You'll probably really enjoy it. They're well written. The characters are actually interesting. It's not like a case of you've got a character who kind of falls flat and doesn't feel like there's like much going on there with them. The characters definitely change over time. You can definitely sense like there's like real friendship going on between the three main characters in this book. So there is some camaraderie going on. Definitely a good book that's worth reading. And respect to some other books like this, the Amaro books by like Charles Saunders. Also, I'm like really enjoying this one. I'm like 2/3 of the way through this book, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm looking forward to reviewing it, and I'm looking forward to reading the second book. I'm tempted to go out and buy the third, fourth, and fifth books in this series. That might happen in future years where maybe I'll just buy all the books and then do a review on every single one. And the same thing with like a lot of my Conan books. I probably will be doing reviews on them in the future, where I can just do a review on every single book because there's a lot of these books that are actually really good to read. Now I know some people will complain about Elsbreg de Camp, which is a different issue. Elsbreg de Camp was kind of like he changed the Conan character and made him more talkative, and there's other issues going on there. But if you want to just read more of the original stuff, then you get a book like this, okay, where it's only Robert E. Howard's work, and there's none of the Elsbreg de Camp or anybody else's work sprinkled in there, where they're like adding extra stories about the character. If you want only original stories, you get something like this. This is a fantastic book to get. Okay. And if you're like me and you're into like hand crossbows and other stuff, well, yeah, it's these are all toy crossbows. But, this is also a good book to read. Okay? This, not so much. Because, like my personal books, I don't actually put hand crossbows in there. It's not really Wolfric's thing to do. Okay? It's not really his thing. Same thing with the Conan books. You're not going to find hand crossbows in there. Definitely swords, definitely axes, definitely longbows, that sort of thing. If you're into those things, then you'll probably really enjoy these. If you're more like a sword and crossbow kind of guy, read this book or read the Witcher series, because that has hand crossbows in there as well, at least in the games. In the in the TV show, you never see him use a hand crossbow. And in the books, yeah, he doesn't really use a hand crossbow either. It's not really a thing. But in the games, he uses hand crossbows a lot. So that's just a thing. Now, I am going to talk about briefly power ratio. Because this is actually a thing that annoys me. Hand crossbows aren't very powerful, no, especially when you compare it to like a longbow or even a horsebow. I have a horsebow in the living room that's up on a shelf. It's 60 pounds. That's a lot of power. Okay, you pull that, you feel it. That's hunting poundage right there. Like legally speaking in Ontario, where I live, if you want to go bear hunting, you have to use at least 48.5 pounds of force in your longbow or whatever to go bear hunting for black bear. And it's the same poundage for moose or elk or anything like that. Okay, so but if you want to go for like whitetail deer, then it's only like 39.7 pounds is the requirement. For crossbows, a normal crossbow, a hunting crossbow, is 150 pounds of force. Okay, and then for hand crossbows are illegal in Canada. We're not allowed to have them, which is why these are all toys. Okay, this is made of plastic. This is made of bamboo. It's just a toy with plastic things. This is a toy that I made myself. Okay, it's a bit stronger than a normal toy, but it's still technically a toy because it shoots pencils, or it shoots these little bolts that are the size of pencils. But it's basically an issue here where hand crossbows, even a real hand crossbow, they're not that powerful. Like, you could injure somebody with them. You could potentially kill somebody. You could take an eye out, all that. But they're not really an effective weapon. Okay, and I think perhaps Andrew Sapkowski, I'm really not sure how to pronounce his name, the guy who writes the Witcher series, I think he understands that hand crossbows aren't really that powerful, but they put it in the video game, and they're like, yeah, whatever. Hand crossbows aren't really that useful as a weapon. Now, Dylan Doose, maybe he doesn't care. Maybe he's just like, yeah, I'm gonna shoot hand crossbows at people or monsters or whatever, and maybe he'll tip them with silver or something like that. Like, if he was fighting werewolves, then yeah, absolutely. If the characters were fighting werewolves, tip these things with silver, and that will work. Because it's not so much about how much damage it does; it's the fact that, like, hey, they're just vulnerable to silver. So it's, or if you were fighting somebody who's like vulnerable to poison, you'd be like, oh, I just stick poison on the tip of that. And then it doesn't really matter how much damage it deals. It's just about getting the poison in there. But yeah, so that's the thing. Yeah, it's kind of a pet peeve, honestly, for me. It's people don't understand that hand crossbows really aren't that powerful. And even though they're illegal in Canada, because they're like, number one, they're ridiculously easy to make, and they can be quite powerful if you like really spend a lot of effort and time into making like a more powerful one. But usually they won't be that powerful. Like this thing, you can draw that back with one hand. Okay, it's and the stirrup certainly makes it faster. But you can definitely do it with one hand if you're patient about it. But yeah, that's just the thing. I really like my historical accuracy when it comes to my own books and whatnot. To be fair, the character who actually uses the hand crossbow in this book, he doesn't use it that much. It's not that big of a deal. Anyway, that's the end of my book review of Fire and Sword by Dylan Doose, and I really enjoyed it, and I definitely recommend that people go read it. It is a good book. Okay, these will be going online very soon.